Okay, we're going to tackle an epic one today, Shadow of the Beast 3 from 1992 by Reflections and Psygnosis. This was the swan song for Paul Holworth and Cormac Batstone, who had worked on the other Shadow of the Beast games. Reflections went on to make Brian the Lion, but those guys weren't involved. I personally didn't really like Shadow of the Beast 2, except for the intro, but 3 was back to being very impressive. If you haven't seen this first forest level, look how nice it looks. Yeah, it's got the beauty of the Shadow of the Beast 1 is back. So they combine their expertise from the first two games, and this one has a lot to digest. So let's see, where should we start? Okay, the first thing is that it's in dual playfield. So if we take off the bit planes and we take off the sprites that we'll talk about later, and bit plane 0, 2, and 4, with just the trees in the foreground there. So they scroll by, and it's actually the same tree repeated. And then bit plane, if we take those off, with a bit plane 1, 3, and 5, then you get the background with the nice parallax, slice parallax at the bottom there. So putting everything back to normal for a second, if we get rid of the sprites and the bit planes and do 1, 2, and 4 again, and then you put on the blitter visualizer, look at this. The tree at the front is actually blit in. Usually it would just be a playfield of its own. I wasn't 100% sure why that was happening, but I think it has something to do with the sprites. So you'll see that your player character is a sprite. So when he walks, he goes behind. And there's also sprites in the background and the mountains. So those are the priority for the background. And this guy has the priority for the foreground because he's in front of these trees. But if these front trees were a playfield, then the player would be in front of them too. So I think that's right. But sometimes I get confused with the Z order and how things are layered. So let me know if I'm wrong. So besides blitting the big trees there, what the front layer is really meant for is for enemies. So these guys, if I take the blitter visualizer off, they're shooting stuff at you. So that's all blit. You can also see it's blitting in just one line of tiles when you scroll. So these objects here are also in the foreground and they're also blit, and you go behind those as the sprite. So these enemies here are also blit, and they move at 50 frames per second. If I do frame, 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 yep, see they move every frame. Okay, we'll take off the blitter visualizer and we'll take off the bit planes and we'll focus on the sprites for a second. So you might be surprised to see that the gold that you can pick up is a sprite. And then everything else here. So let's go through one by one. We take them all off and just have a small copper sky here. And sprite 0 and 1 is the gold. So it's just 3 colors. So sprite 2, when you press it, looks like nothing. But if you press fire, it's your shuriken. And then sprite number 3 also looks like nothing, but it's also another shuriken. So if you put them together, then you can get 2 at once. So if you just have one of them on, and I'm hitting fire, fire, it just does one at a time. But if you hit both and then hit fire, you can have 2 at a time. So that's what those are. And then sprite 4 is a lot. There's part of the mountain in the background, part of the energy here, and then part of the player. So the odd thing is that the sprites are 16 pixels across, but you get his back and you get part of his head here, which would be more than 16 pixels. So I'm not sure if it's multiplexing the same sprite just above here or what's going on. I've never seen that before. So if you put sprite 5 on, then he becomes attached and 15 colors. And also the other energy vial and more of the mountain. And then sprite 6 would be his front and the score. So sprite 7 finishes him off as an attached sprite and puts the star over here and then has the little lava animation on the mountains. Now, speaking of the mountains, if you look back here, when I scroll, it looks like there's another layer of mountains behind, but you can see it's just an animation. It makes it look like there's another layer there. So check out when I throw on the sprite visualizer. Look at all that. And if I scroll, then they change in the background and shows everything up front. So you've got sprite 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it repeats 4, 5, 6, 7 again. And then notice the back mountains, that they'll be the same sprite. When I move, see they're the same color as the foreground there. And the arch here, if we deconstruct that, it's kind of fun. Take this off like that. So a very nice use of sprites. And if you wonder when your player jumps, are they going to cross and be on the same scan line? Well, here he is jumping with the visualizer on. It looks kind of weird, right? But if I put everything back on and you watch him jump without the visualizer, then yeah, see the mountain stays just above his head, but it looks kind of normal, right? So checking the copper visualizer, look at all that. All these white ones here are repositioning the sprites. Like here's sprite 4 position, sprite 5 position, and over here too, and over here. So that's doing the mountains and everything. And then down here, you've got the color changes for the energy. So that's being copperized. Right down here, it's just changing color 27 from the pink to the blue to the green. And here's something else I don't really have an explanation for, but you see the copperized score here. And here's the colors changing, but it displays the score before the color changes. So not sure if that's a glitch in the debugger or what the answer is there. So with the palette visualizer on, you can see color 0 is a bit copperized and it's dual playfield, so there'll be 15 colors. And they've also changed the colors here. But if we look at the color count, right now it's 22. But if we take off the palette visualizer and we put on the sprites and then we go back down, then it's 75 colors, because you've got all the gradient here and the sprites. So they use quite a few sprites in this game, just like Shadow of the Beast 1. This little wheel is a sprite. You can see it right here as sprite 0 and 1. So all the incidental object sprites are 0 and 1. We saw the gold earlier and this, and we'll see some more. But another interesting thing is that you'll see another wheel right here, and if you put the blitter visualizer on, it's being blit. So even though they're right beside each other, one is a sprite and one is a blit. So this little grenade is also a sprite. So you get the idea. There's a lot of sprites around. And then if you've seen my first Shadow of the Beast video, you know there's a lot of palette changes happening as you're scrolling through the level. So if I put this visualizer on and I start walking, look at how these colors change. Again, right there, the palette changes. So what's happening in the game? And we go from over here to over here, we now have this guy. And so he's got new colors. So if we just isolate the front playfield, you'll see him come up and he's using this color right here. So yeah, this game is very complex under the hood. So it really emphasizes that when you are going up and down here, you can see a lot of things changing. You've got the upper Y split here for the vertical multi-directional scrolling. You've got color changes going up and down. And with the palette visualizer, you've got the colors changing over here, depending on where you are. So what's your guess here? Do you think the meat or the fire is a sprite? 1, 2, 3. It was the fire. And like always, it should be sprite 0 and 1. Yeah, it makes sense that the fire was a sprite and not the meat, because now the meat is on the same scan line as the key, and the key is a sprite. It's only 3 colors, again, sprite 0 and 1. What they've done is they've also cycled the colors, so it looks like it's animating. With the parallaxing ground, I forgot to point it out in the copper visualizer, so if we put that on and we move, you can see it corresponds to the bit plane pointers being changed. So right here, right here, right here, and right here. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slices of parallax there. So here's a great representation of the palette changing. I'm about to jump over here. So I'll put the palette visualizer on, and then look at that. So it changed the whole front layer to these colors. And then look what we're going to walk up on these. If we just do bit plane 0, 2, and 4, then there they are, just in the foreground. And there's the palette. These spiky guys are a real throwback again to Shadow of the Beast 1. And once we get past them, we put the visualizer back on and walk, then soon, bang, changes the whole palette again. So that happens all throughout the game. So we get to the big boss. If we put the blitter visualizer on, see he's a big blit. But if we take that off and look, he'll just be on bit plane 0, 2, and 4. There he is. And with the palette visualizer, the whole front playfield is now his color. and his purple projectile here, if we pause that when he's shooting it, and we take off sprites, it's also a sprite, sprite 0 and 1 again. Okay, here we are at level 2, and there's a bunch of similarities and some differences in this level, so let's take a look. First of all, it's dual playfield again. If we take the bit planes off, we got bit plane 0, 2, and 4. This guy is in the front playfield, and he's being blit. Now, sprite-wise, you might think it's exactly the same because you got these mountains in the background, but there is a difference. Check this out. The clouds are also sprites. So sprites 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 make up the clouds and the moon. And here's another one of my favorite palette changes. So if you walk from here, look at these three colors. They change. And you would think that it's to do with these right here, but these are actually sprites. If you pause it, just like that boss from the last level, sprite 0 and 1 make up the fireball. So I think the real reason it changes is because when you get this battering ram and you bring it over here and these flames hit the top of you, it starts to go on fire. And that is not a sprite, it is a blit. So it needs these three colors. In this level, the big chain is all a blit, and we have over 105 colors here with the gradients in the background. So overall, each level has a similar structure and a similar copper visualizer set up the same way. So yeah, it was great technical work, and it's a fun game with a lot of nice puzzles to solve. It's really too bad that this Shadow of the Beast team didn't make an AGA game from the ground up. That would have been incredible, but I think they sort of moved on to working for games for the PlayStation with the Psygnosis hookup. So sad for us, but we thank them for the Shadow of the Beast legacy. So shout out to Reflections. So thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe and comment if you haven't. As always, thanks so much for watching. See you soon. Take care.